What's going on, guys? This is Mike, back with another video. So today we have a special guest. I do want to mention something. I apologize for the video quality. We are doing this from Skype, and I am using a recording program that isn't that great. But our special guest is Jim Belanis.
VCR recorder.
What's that?
We're using a 1980s VCR recorder.
Exactly. So our special guest today is Jim Belanis. I served in the Army with him. What's
going on?
So today we're going to talk about his experience with low testosterone and how it's affected his life. It's a little bit more unique.
What it has been.
Yeah, it's a little bit more unique than you would typically see out of the average experience that we're all used to hearing. And then in this video, this will be a great example for you guys as to how important it is to keep your hormones in range, especially your estrogen, and how it may affect things like your dopamine and serotonin, which I'll go over in a later video. But so Jim, why don't you just go ahead and start by telling us when it first started for you and the type of symptoms you're experiencing.
Shortly after I got out of the military, probably about 2 months before I got out, I started acting erratic. And at the time, a lot of my friends and family didn't really necessarily know why. I didn't know why, and it wasn't until 2 or 3 years later that you and I kind of reached the conclusion that it may have been hormonally induced. But the heaviest symptoms started about 3 to 4 years ago, about 2 months before I got out of the military, and I just noticed a complete degeneration of my ability to function, my ability to cognitively reason, my ability to interact socially.
Now, what about your sexual desire and function? How is that?
You know, it's funny because a lot of people, and I'm sure you've experienced this as well, and a lot of the other TRT users out there, I guess, probably experienced that sexual question. But honestly, my psyche was so damaged that sex. It wasn't that my sex drive was low. It was that my brain functioning was so erratic, and that sex wasn't even a thought on my mind. Honestly, going through the day and interacting with people was so far more detrimental to my life than anything sexually related. Of course, my sex drive was low, but that wasn't even at the forefront of my mind at that point.
Right. So, now, you saw some doctors about this?
Well, what happened was probably for about 1.5 to 2 years from the onset of my symptoms. It started with the complete erratic mental breakdown. Honestly, my mind was completely erratic. There's no way to describe it beyond that. I mean, I was having a complete mental breakdown. Didn't know what it was caused by. And I didn't really see a doctor about it until 2 years later, or 2 to 3 years later.
And during this time, you never suspected it might be your hormonal levels, did you?
No, I had no idea. Honestly, I thought, because I was about 2021, I thought that perhaps I might be schizophrenic. Because a lot of my symptoms were very similar, which I'm sure, I don't know if you talked about that in the videos prior, but they've linked schizophrenia to low estrogen.
Sure.
And at the time, being 21, which is about the age of onset of schizophrenia, I thought perhaps I may be living with schizophrenia for the rest of my life.
Right. And so you went and saw these doctors eventually, though, I'm assuming, and what kind of things did they test you for? What were they suspecting?
Well, the first experience related to, with a doctor related to my hormonally induced problems was through the VA. I saw a doctor, and most of the symptoms...
And for anyone who doesn't know, VA is Veterans Affairs.
Yes. Strangely, a lot of the symptoms associated with low estrogen are also symptoms associated with a lot of dissociative mental disorders, depersonalization, depression, delusional thoughts. So initially what happened was I went to the VA inpatient psychiatric care for about 30 days with these symptoms. Hold on, my phone just gave me an alert here. But I went in with these issues, and they put me on a whole range of antipsychotics.
Now, did they run any tests on you at this point, or was this all based on
speculation?
At that
point, no. I mean, all they around me was asking me questions, talking to me, And you would think, again, that secondary hypogonadism can be caused by pituitary trauma. You would think at least a hormone panel, especially through the VA, would be on there, because you and I were both kind of.
And I want to make a point to the viewers here that this is the type of problems that we deal with in the medical community, where these people come in and the last thing they're thinking of is running the right tests, such as hormone panels, to figure out what's wrong with them. Instead, they put them on all these antipsychotics to cover up the symptoms and not figure out the cause.
Which actually block testosterone production even further.
Right. So, how did you feel once they put you on all these medications?
I mean, I didn't feel any better. I mean, I felt even more withdrawn, obviously, because, again, I mean, it makes so much sense now, but those antipsychotics were blocking my testosterone even further, so it really just made the issue worse.
Right. Okay, so eventually time went on and you started to feel better, or?
I started to feel mildly better. The delusions went away, the paranoid thoughts, the depersonalization went away quite a bit. But what really remained was I had always younger, and you've known me for 10 years, but when I was younger, I was always really outgoing, and social interaction was really easy for me. What remained for probably, I stabilized and was functional after about 2 years. But what remained for the remaining year, until I actually realized what the problem was these social interactions. I could not interact socially. It was absolutely petrifying to talk to other people.
Right. So then me and you came up with the theory that we might have a hormonal issue. It was kind of a long shot.
Yeah.
And we were kind of joking about it, but you ended up deciding reluctantly to go out and get your hormones checked. And
well, what had happened was you had been talking about your hormone deficiencies and problems for about 6 months, and you mentioned getting your blood drawn, and I was like, you know what, I'd like to get my blood drawn just to see where my hormones are. And so I went to my doctor, I got my bloods drawn, expecting that they would be normal, and my testosterone came back at about 310 on that first test. And I remember that the nurse called me up and said, yeah, everything came back normal. And I was, well, what was the actual range of my testosterone? And they said 310. And I was like, whoa, like I remember my stomach, like I felt nauseous, and I was like, oh my fucking God.
And keep in mind, guys, this is the bottom threshold of where it should be. 310 would be like a 90-year-old man.
Yeah, and bear in mind, those ranges are so wide because for someone who's like, 5'2" and a skinny, frail little girly man, no offense if there's any of those girly men out there, but, they may have a testosterone level of 310 at their normal homeostasis. Right. But that was never my case. I was always very outgoing.
An anomaly as well.
Yeah, absolutely. But that was not my case. I was very outgoing. I was very, very stereotypically high testosterone in my youth, and I was very symptomatic at that point.
At the worst of this down period in your life, where your hormones were clearly off, if you could describe it in a couple sentences, how would you describe it?
It was absolute hell. I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy, which is you, as you know. But I wouldn't. It was absolutely a hellish nightmare. Honestly, I spent probably 2 years of my life beyond suicidal. Suicidal to the point that I was praying for death. I couldn't function. I couldn't do anything.
And your day-to-day life just consisted of sitting and doing nothing?
Yeah. I mean, for probably about a year and a half, I would wake up, and just my brain would be empty. Hold on, can we cut here? I gotta charge my phone.
Yeah.
I gotta go to my phone.
Guys.
Yeah, hold on.